speakers. Yes, Muhammad is here. Um, and Before we start, I would like to thank BIBA and the Egyptian British Chamber of Commerce for making this happening. Although COP27 is a call from the earth and it is environmental rather than anything else, we still have business, finance, technology, and education to have a role to play. And that's why we brought our distinguished speakers from different backgrounds to discuss smart cities and how this could affect the environmental solutions. Today, we have with us Dr. Mahmoud Shafi. Dr. Mahmoud is an associate professor and civil engineering director at the Knowledge Hub at Coventry University in Egypt, with more than 20 years of experience in civil engineering. We have with us Mr. Hazim. Hazim is a citizen local government global leader and global smart mobility co-leader at BWC. We have Victoria Edwards. Victoria is one of those unique business leaders combining artistic sensibility with business acumen. Victoria is a former concert pianist and she's entrepreneur by nature. Yeah, and she's a co-founder and the CEO of Fido. Fido is a pioneering tech company founded in 2019 and 18 to provide leak detection methods and solutions. We have with us Mohammed Saad. Mohammed is the head of export finance at the British Embassy in Egypt with experience in financial and political regulatory aspects. And finally, you have me, Mohammed Ruslan. I'm a partner at Livari Law Firm. And as everything starts by education, I would like to start with Dr. Shafi first. So, Dr. Shafi, um, is it working? Okay. I think there's a spare mic here. Okay. Dr. Shafi, what's the definition of sustainability and what should be considered as sustainable materials when it comes to smart cities?
Thank you, Muhammad, actually, for your kind introduction. Just one thing, Muhammad, not Mahmoud, but that's fine.
Uh,
So
Sorry, it's my
that's
fault.
okay. Good morning, everyone. Just would like to actually show my appreciation and gratitude actually to be here with you in the panel today to complete actually the sustainable development triangle, with it includes actually the environmental, social pillar, as well as the industrial pillar or the economy pillar actually. So in general, I'm actually representing the Coventry University branch in Egypt, where it's part of the Knowledge Hub University, that it's one of the IBC models that's been initiated in under the law of 162 for the year 2018, which was actually a great and a wise decision actually by His Excellency President Sisi to introduce such model actually to the Egyptian just sorry to introduce such concept actually in the market. So by having such IBC model actually it helped actually not only in keeping the foreign currency actually within the Egyptian economy. However, it starts also in introducing different competition in the higher education market, which will result actually in the improving the quality of the graduates at the end, and this is all our aim. So going back to the question actually for Muhammad about sustainability, I think all of us here knows that sustainability is how to acquire the resources for the present situation without compromising the future generation. But the issue is that we are not talking only about sustainability. We need to talk more about the sustainable development and the intersection actually between the environment, social, and economy. And this is actually one of the things actually that I'm really happy about, that everyone in this panel actually they're going to be representing different pillars, and we can reach actually the sustainable development at one of the end of this panel, hopefully. So borrowing actually a quote from Her Excellency Dr. Rania Mashat, talking about from pledges to implementation. So I think it's time actually to start having a new generation with a strong background about sustainability and sustainable development and how all these are integrated together for a kind of a product actually that will be able to work in Wafi program or whatever programs globally in all over the world. So talking about sustainable materials, actually, we cannot consider any material as sustainable on its own. So you need to assess and evaluate the materials based on the country that you are in. For example, if you have a timber in countries with forests and so on, it can be sustainable material for their side. But if you want to use it in Egypt, it's not going to be as sustainable as using, for example, a cement actually over here. However, cement is considered one of the most polluted material on earth for the manufacturing process and the amount of embodied carbon that's being used during even manufacturing, transportation, construction. So nowadays there are a lot of scientific researches that's been working to find how to replace actually the cement in the concrete mix with some of the industrial waste that is already being there and being disposed at the end of any manufacturing process, and how to use it to strengthen the concrete or to minimize the amount of cement that's being used to try to reduce the amount of embodied carbon. So one of the most common material is the blast furnace slag out of the steel industry. So all this has been disposed. So if you can just use it and replace, and a lot of researchers actually showed that 70% of the cement can be replaced actually by this slag and keeping and maintaining actually the same strength of concrete. So talking about sustainable material, it has to be assessed separately, and then you can more about the whole structure or the whole project that you are talking about. Hopefully later in this panel, I'm going to talk more about the way of education, how to educate the new generation or the new decision makers to be ready for all the sustainable projects. Thank you, Mohammed.
Thanks, Mohammed. Mr. Hazim, when we say sustainable materials, everything comes to our mind is smart city. So what is a smart city, and what are the examples of smart cities that have been successfully implemented globally? One more? No. One more? That's it.
Perfect. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Pleasure to be here. My name is Hazim Galal. I lead PwC's work globally with cities, including smart cities. I started on my first smart city project about 10 years ago. We worked with the capital of Kazakhstan at the time. It was called Astana, now Nur Sultan. And in the past 10 years, I must have worked with over 40 global cities on their smart cities programs. And when we talk about smart cities in general, it is not about technology. With all, apologies to the technologists in the room. Technology is an important factor. It enables you to have a smart city, but a smart city at the end of the day is about offering convenient, accessible urban services to the residents, the visitors, the businesses of a city, right? So it is all about how do you use data in an intelligent way to make intelligent decisions about designing and operating a city with all the different services and verticals you can think about, be it education, healthcare, mobility, the heating, utilities. All of these are the different components of a smart city. And from the work that we've done over the years, it's very important to make the distinction between what are the challenges and the solutions that you have for what we call a brownfield city. That is a city like Cairo, for example, like Amsterdam, like Tokyo. It's a city that exists. It's a city that has relatively outdated infrastructure in some cases. And what you need to be doing as a city mayor or a CTO, a chief technology officer in a city, is to start thinking, how do I start imposing intelligence and technology, IoT, and smart solutions so that I can kind of like fix the boat as I'm sailing it? Very different reality from greenfield cities like the new administrative capital, like Neom in Saudi Arabia, like all of these cities that are being constructed from scratch. And here the challenge is a little bit different, because it is all about how do you sort of like put in the sufficient infrastructure from day one? How do you design the city also with smartness in mind and all the use cases? A use case is just a fancy name that is how are you actually going to use the technology to provide a service, all right? So when you wake up, for example, in a smart city, you want to be able to make decisions about your daily commute. For example, I would look at an app, I would have multiple mobility options. One of them could be, taking a public transport bus and maybe ending the last mile or the last point maybe with a bicycle or a micro scooter or something like that. That's option A. Option B could be I'm going to ride my own personal vehicle. Option C could be ride sharing, or could be an Uber or Careem. And you want to be in a smart city to be able to assess the time, the cost, maybe the environmental impact that you're going to have, and most recently, because of COVID, the level of exposure that I'm going to have to other people, because I don't want to be sharing a bus ride with many people because there is a disease or a contamination, sort of like, or a flu season in that city. So these are the type of examples that we've seen around the world, and this is no longer, something theoretical. A lot of cities are actually using this in the region and globally to make intelligent decisions. As such, it is what we call, for example, mobility as a service. And that allows you to use the data, not only your own data, but also mobile data, to see how people move from one part to the city to the other, and use this to better plan your public transport, better plan your roads capacity, and better plan even the work starting times. And especially these days with remote working and all of that, you can make those decisions as a city and as businesses and as citizens living in a city. And I'll come with more detail, but I just wanted to paint a general picture and to simplify the whole concept, because I think, like many other sort of like jargons in the industry, sometimes the term is a little bit abused, but it's a lot more simpler than what people think.
Thank you, Hazem. Victoria, as just Hazem mentioned, that technology enables us and supports the goal and supports the smart cities overall. So when it comes to technology, it's 30% of all water in distribution systems around the globe is wasted before even reaching the tap. How can technology help with that, taking into consideration that water authorities are not technology enhanced?
Okay, well, wasn't it lovely to see the first keynote? And congratulations to Egypt. It's no longer just talking, it's no longer hot air, there's actually action, there's implementation. And that's really what it's about. And actually to see it here with us on the ground. But let that number sink in. 30%. That's on a good day. We are the only industry, the water industry in the world, that is allowed to produce something then lose 30% of it. We should all get the sack. We should all be fired. All right? And what we should be focusing on is day zero. That's the day the world runs out of water. It's happened already. It's happening now, and it's happening on every continent, whether it's developed country or not. And we have to stop it. And when we're talking about technology and innovation, actually it's more fundamental than that. It's about that human right to access to water, and how can technology and data and actionable data play a part in that? And we're talking about smart cities. Well, it's no good smart cities if the new pipes they put in are leaking, because that underpins what's happening. So what we're talking about here is we need to get the fundamentals right, and we need to use technology and AI in a non-proprietary open data way to make visible what is invisible. To be building things in a world that we lose 30% of what we produce needs to stop, because net zero will never be achieved without addressing the fact you need water to power all this new technology. So let's get real, let's focus, let's use technology in a way that is non-proprietary, that's open data, that gives us visibility about what's invisible. Most leaks you never see. 95% of them are underground. So, you saying in a developed country, I said to one utility company, I said, how do you assess how big your leaks are? because you want to fix the big ones. This is the problem that we're facing. They said, well, we wait till somebody phones up because it's running down the road. And we said, well, that's only 5%. They said, and very proudly said, we dig the hole, we get a bucket, and we put a bucket next to the leak, and we take a picture. And we're going, but you're missing all your big leaks. So when we're talking about data, it has to be integrated. It has to be non-proprietary. Proprietary technology is not going to solve the problem. We will not be able to implement under WAFI, the water action, the food and the energy without embracing true collaboration, true data that is actionable, not just more dashboards, not just bright new shiny things, and let's solve the major crisis that's happening at the moment, which is the water crisis. Then these smart cities can be built, they can be sustainable, and they will last.
Thank you. Mohammed, when we are talking about smart cities, finance is an integral part of the process itself. How can UK export finance support clean growth and sustainable projects?
Thank you, Muhammad. Good morning, everyone. So here with you. So UKEF is the export credit agency for the UK government, and we believe that we have a key role to play in supporting and direct financial flows toward clean growth and green. So ahead of COP26, we have published our own climate strategy, and it's built on 5 main pillars. The most important pillar I see is that we are trying to understand and mitigate the climate-related financial risks. Because as we heard, Minister Rania said that the demand for finance is there, the supply and the appetite of financial institutions is there, but there is a gap. And I think this gap is on finding the bankable projects. So the project sponsors need some technical assistance to be able to make their project bankable and viable for financing. And from our side, it's a learning curve. We're trying to understand more about the risks and mitigating them. What we have done so far, we have issued our climate change strategy. We have providing more than 5 billion sterling pound support for clean growth and green projects. We have created a 2 billion sterling pound direct lending facility for clean growth and sustainable projects. And we are still on the way to develop more products, upgrade the existing products to be suitable for clean growth and sustainable projects. We have supported many projects across the world, wind farm, drinking water in Ghana, and more projects across the world. But the one example that I want to mention here is that we have supported building the smart headquarter of the leading environmental management firm in UAE, BIA. It's one of the most sophisticated smart offices in UAE, and we're very proud of this project. We supported it by 31 million sterling pound. We're very keen to replicate such transactions in the future with a scale up of bigger projects, smart cities. Yeah, and the appetite is there. The technical assistance on the bankability of the project is a thing that we need to work with international players on, availing more programs and initiatives to provide this technical assistance is a major thing to overcome the challenge and the gap between the finance and the project sponsors.
Thanks, Mohammed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hazem, when we say smart cities, it looks like a complicated and sophisticated components. What are the main components needed for a smart city?
If you think about the ecosystem of a smart city, you have 5 main blocks, right? Think about it as the sensing part that's where you collect all of your data, right? And then the connectivity part, that's where you take the data that you've collected through IoT, cameras, what have you, and start transmitting this through connectivity. It could be 5G, it could be, you know, any fiber optics, whatever. And then you have the analytical part where you actually take all of this data and through AI, machine learning and all of that, you start analyzing the data and making those decisions. That's kind of like, you know, sort of like the building foundation or the platform. On top of this, you have all of these use cases. How are you going to start in each one of the sectors, be it education, smart living, smart economy, to do all of these, sort of analyze all of these data and not necessarily work with them in silos, but also integrate them, you know, in the next layer. Now, what people sometimes forget about are the enablers, right, in that ecosystem. And those enablers are the standards, you know, whether it's going to be open source or what is the standard, the technological standard that you're going to use. There is also the regulatory part. We've all heard about GDPR, which is a privacy standard, what to do with people data that you're collecting, how do you aggregate it so that, you know, we don't know that Mr. X or Mrs. Y are doing this, but, you know, a collective group has a tendency to move from one part of the city. But all of this is very important, but really the most important part is the partnerships. Those partnerships with the private sector, with academic institutions, with financing institutions are essential. No government, big or small, anywhere around the world can shoulder the investment of a smart city on its own, especially city-level governments. They just can't. By definition, and in many parts around the world, you know, the whole election cycles of mayors every 4 or 5 years, by definition, these smart city projects are long-term projects. And there isn't appetite sometimes to make those initial investments upfront. Because when you think about an investment in a smart city, you have to take into consideration what we call the total cost of ownership. So not only look at the upfront investment that you have in the infrastructure, but what would be the benefits that you will actually be able to accrue from the operation. Going back to the water example, right? If you were to install in the water distribution system the sensors and the IoT that would eliminate the need for the bucket, basically, and you're able to actually sense through the IoT that the pressure in a certain type of the pipe is less, and that, you know, suggests a leak. That would help you save, that will help you do preventative maintenance, and the overall cost of operations in the lifetime of the asset will be substantially less. But unfortunately, a lot of these decisions are only made based on that upfront investment that you make. Tokyo, best practice around the world, is 2% leakage, right? World class is 4%. I think in Egypt here, and I'm not only talking about the buildings, we're over 40%. Now think about the benefits that we can get where we are a country that is, you know, maybe ready to go into political conflict because of water. So a lot of these investments have to be rethought in a very different way over the full benefits you get from that initial investment over the lifetime.
Thank you, Hazem. Going back, Hazem, to what we're saying, I would like to ask Victoria on how data and AI can participate in this, and how can we change the people's behavior towards energy saving?
Well, I'm a big believer in not having data for data's sake. It has to be data that gives you an insight. But I do think it's funny when you say change people's behavior. And I'm a big believer in community agency, because we've tried regulation, we've tried government initiatives, we've tried lots of things to encourage us to actually fix this pressing problem that we're going to run out of water. And we're talking about building cities. It has to involve the community. Can you imagine the power of your community? How many of you in this room have been frustrated because there's been a leak in your street, or you've not had water, or it's the wrong color? How many? Put your hands up. Be brave. Right. Okay. If I could give you that visibility, so you know as a community, as that consumer, where your leaks are beneath your feet. But your water company is telling you not to use your hose pipe, not to have a shower or share a shower. That could be interesting. Doesn't that include us all in making the right decisions about saving the planet and getting rid of water security and the insecurity by making visible what is invisible? And that's what good AI and technology can do. But it has to stop being proprietary. You can't have somebody putting a sensor in going, but it's my sensor, so you've got to use my AI, got to use my platform. You have to knock this over on the head. And it brought it home to me when I was speaking at SIWI. And it's a wonderful collection of academics, and a very well-known academic came up to me and she said, hello, I'm so-and-so, and I'm an academic. And I said, well, hello, I'm Victoria and I'm trade, so shall I sit down? So we've got to stop this. We've got to stop the short-termism of each individual silo, knock them down, be agnostic, be open data, involve the community in understanding the size of the problem and the difficulty of the problem. Let's make a collective decision. Let's use that data wisely. And then isn't that a great way for this smart city or the government or the region or the mayor to say, look, thank you for noticing this leak. You can see it. We're going to play a little game and you'll notice where all your leaks are. We've now come to fix it and you've saved your community this amount of water. Well done. It's about not just using data to beat up the services that are being provided, but to have an all community encompassing conversation through being non-siloed. All together, we're going to solve this problem. And it's all about implementation, but implementation will only work if it's not short-termism. Exactly as you're saying, we've got to look at the total cost. It's non-proprietary. It's truly collaborative. So if you're talking here, we've got a leak here and we've done some great work, and I want to thank the Egyptian government and Vodafone here for making this happen in Sharm el-Sheikh. We identified some leaks. That leak is now a global being. We've captured those leaks and we fed it. So everywhere else in the world is learning how leaks behave. And that's what we talk about being non-proprietary and open data. So whether you're in Rio, whether you're in wet and windy Wigan, which it very is in the UK, whether you're here, everything that we're doing is making a difference collectively. And that's how we're going to solve the problems. And that's how we're going to implement. And we're going to make sure there's no short-termism, because we're going to get the community involved. We're going to make visible what's invisible. And we're going to understand the size of the problem, and we're going to fix it together. And then we can build these smart cities on real solid foundations and make sure that the issues of water scarcity, day zero doesn't happen. Then we can absolutely tackle net zero. So let's use this year to get that implementation framework ready by having non-proprietary conversations.
Thanks, Victoria.
Thank you.
Dr. Shafi, when we say technology and AI, data, that all is considered technology. As a civil engineer, what technologies are important to urban and rural planning practice?
Thanks, Mohammed. I think the main difference actually between rural and urban planning is going to be the difference of land use. Actually, what you're going to be using the land for. Is it going to be for agriculture to be the food part, the next food part, or is going to be urban area where people is going to be living with different aspects, hospitals, education institutions, roads, residential areas, and so on. So the first thing, actually, there's a lot of technology tools, and as Hazem said, actually, that technology is just a tool that we need to make sure that we are using it right, using it in the right context actually of it, either for the water leakage or for any smart city in general. But what's really important, actually, we all are using the technology. The most common one is the GPS or the Google Maps actually that we are using. It's all based about technology, and we are using it every day to give you the shortest distance from one location to the other and so on. So this is going to save somehow the energy at the end for some routes. But how to protect the data actually is one of the things that we need to take and have some experts actually or fresh grads dealing with, like cybersecurity and ethical hacking field, because all the data can be in cloud technology and can be all over the place, but you need to make sure that all the data are secured for the right usage of the consumer and the users of this data, either going to be for water leakage or for urban planning or rural planning. And also you can use the remote sensing to get the feeling of how the architectural zone actually is going to be different from one year to another, depending on the amount of land use of the agriculture zone. So the security actually of the data is one of the most important things that we need to talk about, or to take the technology into it later on. Thank you.
Thanks. Going back to sustainability, Hazim, how do smart cities aim to be sustainable?
Yeah, I mean, the two terms basically have, if you think about it as a Venn diagram, there's a lot of overlap, right? But I always think about, again, smart cities being a tool to become sustainable, right? You don't, at the end of the day, being a smart city is not an objective on its own. It's a means to an end, and that end should be sustainability, economic, social, and environmental. So going back to the examples that I mentioned with respect to mobility, if a smart city or a smart mobility program would allow you to reduce congestion, to reduce your emissions, that is contributing to the sustainability goals of a city, not only the environmental, but the economic, because there is a cost for congestion. And regardless of which city you are in the world, your commute time affects your productivity, your quality of life, sometimes even your health and well-being. So when you think about, if I'm going to use data and smart mobility applications to shave off 20, 50% in some cases of my commute time in a city, that would translate into sustainability in the city as well. So we should think about smart cities as a means to the end, and that end is building resilient, sustainable cities.
Thanks, Hazim. Muhammad, we were just mentioning that no government can finance the smart cities on its own. So, what are the challenges facing financial institutions in financing clean growth projects, and how we overcome those challenges? One more? Yes.
Actually, the challenges from our point of view as a financier, I think the bankability of the projects. So yeah, as I mentioned, the appetite is there, the liquidity is there from ECAs, from development banks, from commercial banks, but the bankability of the project is the challenge for us. From the project sponsors' point of view, accessing finance is not easy for them. So again, the gap is there. We can overcome that by two steps or two plans that we can commit to. First, increase our understanding about the projects and the new trends in the clean growth space, understanding the risks and trying to mitigating it, increasing our appetite for clean growth projects. And from the project sponsor side, they need, as I mentioned, they need international coordinated efforts to increase the bankability of the project. And that can be done by many initiatives, many programs, and we start to see those initiatives applied. For example, the government of UK just launched a program called Climate Finance Accelerator, whereby they provide technical assistance to project sponsor to make their projects more bankable and more viable for financing. So I think more initiative and program like that from the international community would help a lot. More learning from financial institution side and increasing the appetite for clean growth would help a lot. And I think long way to go, but we started to be on track in the last few years. Thank you.
I think Hazim wants to add something
Yeah,
here.
I want to come in on this financing part because it's something we deal with quite a bit. I was in Detroit in the US 3 weeks ago, an event with the World Economic Forum. They invited us to see how the city, which at its peak was 2 million population and went down to 600, 800,000 because of the decline of the automotive industry. And the sense that I got that even in the States, right, and I'll get to other more relevant examples in the UK, even in the States, with all the federal money that is coming right now to invest in the infrastructure, a lot of cities and states at the local government level are lacking the capability to formulate these bankable projects. So I always joke and say PPPs should stand for properly planned projects, right? Not private, public-private partnerships. So it's a universal problem, right? The cities don't typically have the capability, maybe with the exception of the big ones, London's and all of those of the world, to have teams that are able to take a need, articulate it in a way that will be attractive enough for financial institutions. And, sort of like with the multilateral development banks that typically work at the national level, hence my question to the minister earlier, how are you taking this national vision to a local level? They are starting to realize this gap, and they are starting to provide capacity development programs to cities so that they are able to formulate these smart cities, resilience, developmental projects in infrastructure especially, so that they're able to close that gap. In the UK now, I think former mayor, because I think Bristol decided they don't need a mayor anymore, Rees, basically, he's a good friend of mine. We both sit on the same city's council. And he was eagerly trying at Glasgow, basically, to bring that thinking of how do we create this capability at the city council level, not only in the UK, but globally, so that they are able actually to bridge the gap. Because on the one side, you have the sovereign wealth funds, multilateral development banks, and even private equity are saying, we have money, we want to invest in bankable projects. You have, on the other hand, the cities that have dire needs, and nobody's helping to bridge that gap. And I think there is a realization finally is that if we don't bridge that gap, the money will stay here and desperation will stay on that other side.
Yeah, can
Thanks,
I
Hassan.
just
Yes,
comment
please.
on that? So absolutely correct. But I think we need transformational change. And transformational change, when you say to a national infrastructure, whether it's water, electricity or gas, it's a risky business for the people that are having to implement it. And you're asking somebody to do something they've not been hired to do that job, to implement transformational change. You need change control experts. You need people that can make that happen. You're saying to somebody, your job is to make sure when the tap turns on, that end customer gets water. But I'm going to tell you, you've not been doing it very well. We know we've not been doing it very well. I want you to have faith because you're going to implement this now, but it's still your responsibility. You're going to do a huge change program without the skill or the expertise to do it. So finance is one part, having properly planned projects, but let's be honest about putting the right people on the right seat, on the right bus to drive that change through, because that's where, when we're talking about implementation, we're going to fall down. It's not just how we're going to finance it. It's actually, do we understand and believe and have the framework to allow people to try and implement and have the right to fail? Because unless we remove that barrier and fear of failure, we'll carry on innovating, we'll never adopt, we'll carry on having money stuck up the chain, and we still won't be hitting our getting rid of day zero and trying to hit net zero. So we need to have a whole encompassing discussion about what is a properly planned project. It means the enablers, the implementers that are on the ground. And if we don't start talking about that now, saying your job is safe, because you put AI in front of everybody and nobody wants to talk to you because they think they're going to lose their jobs. Absolutely not. Can I just make this plea to everybody in this room? AI is like your sat nav. Its only job is to give you the right information. It doesn't drive the car for you. And that's what we need. We need to create a framework of openness, of implementation, but getting the experts in to make sure that change happens. Because without it, we'll still be sitting here going, how are we going to place the money?
Thank you, Victoria. Before leaving the financial challenges, Mohammed, what kind of creative approaches can we have to funding and financing new sources of revenue, business models for recovery and value capture?
I think the collaboration among everyone from multilateral development banks with ECAs, with commercial banks, with the government and private sector, that will lead to a blended solution to be able to finance the clean growth and sustainable projects. So yeah, addressing the climate change issues will require this type of collaboration among everyone to be able to come out with a creative solution, as you mentioned, with a blended solution for governments and private sector. As simple as that. Putting everyone on in the same table and discussing the projects, putting all the efforts on that will help to come out with the creative solutions. Same products we have, commercial banks have, development banks have the product on shelf, but putting the product together, blend it on a way that help financing the project is the only way to address the climate change. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Mohammed. As always, going back to education, Dr. Shafi, education plays an essential role when it comes to sustainability and smart cities. How can we prepare civil engineering students to be ready for this and they just plug and play once they graduate?
So going back to Victoria, actually, what she was saying
Yep.
about how to do the planning right and find the right experts actually to drive actually the bus for sustainable development. So we need to find fresh grads with a system, educational system that's been already designed for taking in the sustainability with its three main pillars actually into consideration from the beginning actually. So we started actually by embracing the sustainability design in our curriculum from day one. So starting from foundation, we start introducing what's the concept of sustainability, what do we mean by sustainability, and so on, all the way until we have a full model and a full graduate actually that is equipped with all needed skills and tools to be able to plug and play in the market. So what we did actually that we went to the market, we went to all the companies that are working here in Egypt and in UK, not all of them, but as many as possible, and try to make an advisory board to check what do you need in your graduate or your employee from the beginning, either software skills, hardware skills, and for sure the softwares that's being used actually in the market in all aspects, not just engineering, in business, computer science, engineering, design and media, just name it. So we need to make sure that all our graduates are ready and equipped with everything. So starting from year one, actually, they know how to do project management, they know how to use all the tools that's needed to be used. The second year, actually, for example, in civil engineer students, they all moved all the way to the building information modeling and how to use the dynamo and assess alternative materials and different materials to make sure how to reduce the embodied carbon for the students. So it's always between the educational institution and the industry. So we need to hear back and forth from them and take their input and put our side and to make sure that we are satisfying all their needs. Thank you.
Just
Victoria,
jump in
yeah.
there. I'm going to be a little controversial, only a little, so don't worry. Ian. Absolutely believe in education is the key. But nobody sits in double maths on a Friday afternoon and say, if I concentrate really hard and I pass my exam, I can go and work in the water industry, right? It's not the industry they want to go into, gaming, or they want to go into, others that have this attraction. So we're saying we need to change the perception. Water is the most valuable resource on the planet. It's not about your e-gaming. It's about using your skills to save the planet. Let's make it an industry that people want to come to. But I'm even going to be more controversial than that. And I'm saying to everybody that works in these wonderful large corporates, and you're thinking you may be winding down a bit, I'm saying come and join the water industry. Be your last hurrah. Bring that change, experience, and knowledge that we need in the industry. Don't just trot off into the sunset. So we need the youth that know what they're doing. In the water industry, there's a great brain drain. But actually, we want some of these grey hairs that want to make a difference in the final thing that they do in their working life. So it's got to be that matter of making this industry attractive, making people understand the size of the problem, making them want to sit in double maths, want to do their STEM studies, and want to be where it's at. It's not a Formula One car. It's about the water industry. And only when we get that enthusiasm in and we get will this implementation go at scale.
Hazim, you want to say something? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm being recruited, as no, I just want to go back to the nature of cities, and it's a system of systems. It's complex. It has to be multidisciplinary. because, and I think part of the issue is that a lot of the programs, at least historically, that we had at universities and even at schools are not multidisciplinary. I mean, you cannot be a civil engineer who doesn't understand economics and finance. You cannot be a business major who doesn't understand technology. You know, so I think there is a need to rethink how we design some of these programs so that they are more multidisciplinary by design. I mean, I teach a course at a University of Penn. Once a semester, I go there. And when I think, you know, about the mix of students in there, it's a combination between the Wharton School of Business and Design and Architecture. And they're getting together these students with different backgrounds, and that's when the magic happens, when you get all of these disciplines
Yeah,
to
integration.
complement each other, right? On projects, in the classroom. That's how you can really create the right type of talent to solve these urban challenges.
Yes, totally agree. When we say integration between business and education, we have a success story here. So United Utilities Innovation Lab is one of those success stories. Victoria, how does this come into reality, and how does it bring value to community?
Well, fundamentally, FIDO wouldn't exist without that innovation lab. I got arm twisted to enter when we were just a concept. And we came from outside the water industry. And the reason they gave us access to everything. This is when I'm talking about being open. They said, we like your idea. You're either completely mad, and the jury's still out on that one, or you've got something that's going to make a difference. And they gave us access to people, to data, to networks. So we worked with them, and we failed multiple times. I mean, we had the huge failure because we thought we'd have to go inside a pipe to find a leak. So we went inside and we lost one of our sensors. So we said, we're going to do it without ever going inside a pipe ever again, and with taking any sensor, being open data. And the reason United Utilities Innovation Lab is so successful is they dedicate somebody. They say, you're working 100% doing your day job. You're now only going to work 50% on your day job. We're going to put somebody else in to do the other 50%. And you're going to dedicate that time to get what you really want. Because if you're in a huge corporation, you're way down the list in digital services when you put in your request. You're way down your operations team. This was their chance to build something that they needed to fix one of their problems. And the United Utilities Innovation Lab, I'm a big spokesman for them because they know innovation is only 10%. The real important thing is implementation and adoption. And in order to do that, it's not just the C-suite going, yeah, it's a great idea, we're going to do it. It's the people that use it every day. And it's by having all those stakeholders involved right at the beginning that you can build something that's of value. And I think if you can create that non-siloed culture that embraces failure, that knows the real work is going to be done in the adoption phase, it's something that people should replicate. And all credit to them because they took a risk. They've got shareholders and they said, we're going to do this. We're not just going to be a tick in the box for Ofwat, bless them Ofwat, but if you make everybody work on 5-year cycles, nothing's going to get fixed. They said, we're actually going to see it through. So I think it's something that could be replicated. I think it's this best practice that should be shared. And I think it's absolutely right, Pierre, because you're very forward thinking. You're actually doing action, not just talking about it. And I think there should be that type of collaboration to make sure they can replicate it all over the globe.
Thanks, Victoria. And my question is to Hazim. What are the lessons learned, Hazim, from greenfield versus brownfield cities?
I think we've covered a little bit of these in the introduction, but again, by definition, the greenfield cities, you don't want to be retrofitting a greenfield city 5 or 10 years after you've built it. So you have to get it right from the get-go. And the problem is you're trying to foresee where the technology is going to evolve to. But there are very important concepts. Usually a city would break even around a population of 300, 350,000, depending on, the country that it's in. So the challenge becomes, as you're building the greenfield city, how are you going to attract that initial critical mass that is going to justify the provision of these urban services, the water stations, the distribution system, all of these without collecting the sufficient fees. So that scalability and technology selection, as the technology is constantly evolving, but you have to lock in some of these design decisions in terms of how is the connectivity, the digital connectivity is going to look like, has to be very well thought out. And you kind of like design the city from the get-go. You put in all the technology and the water. You don't want to be digging up the streets of a smart city, you know, in a greenfield city 5 years after you've designed it, right? So scaling up while you're attracting people, the technology choices, the integration is all very important. And then you always need to think, how is this new city, I'll take the new administrative capital here as an example, how is it integrating with the existing cities in terms of accessibility? What does it add in terms of economic activity? How do I make sure that it's fully integrated without that system? A brownfield city or an existing city, on the other hand, the analogy I always use, it's like fixing the boat while you're sailing it. The city has to operate, Cairo has to operate, Amsterdam has to operate, while you're actually trying to retrofit and embed intelligence, one sector, one block, one district at a time. So these are very different challenges. And of course, one of the things I really liked about Amsterdam is they have managed to become very technologically enabled, and I've worked with their former mayor and CTO on many of their projects, while keeping the architectural theme and look and feel of the city and not disrupting it with, you know, 5G towers and all of these ugly things that would take from the beauty of a city and its architecture.
Thank you, Hazem. Thank you all. And it's now time for questions from our audience. Anyone has a question? No? Yes.
Thank you very much for a great session. And my questions to Victoria, actually. I've got the first time I've heard about day zero for water. That's adding to my climate anxiety. Can you explain what that actually is, and when we might be likely to see that?
Yeah, it should actually. We need to get the politicians to just change one word in their two-word slogan. So day zero has already happened. It happened in 2018 in Cape Town. It's happened in Birmingham, Mississippi this year. It's even happening in the UK. It's literally the day we run out of clean water. You turn on the tap and there is no water left. We can't produce enough. And the problem that we've got, if we can fix it, if we fix the leaks that are in our networks. So we're talking about Tokyo that's only got 2% leakage. Well, Las Vegas has got similar leakage, but every drop matters, and they take it really seriously because they've only got Lake Mead as their supply. And here we've got also, where is the sole source of water coming from? So it's great to see that Egypt are taking it seriously, but it's a real problem. And I'm going to get cut down in flames here. I was very disappointed when the UN on World Water Day said the answer to solving our water scarcity and insecurity problems that affect everybody on the planet is abstraction and desalination. Because what's the point of going through very expensive processes if we then lose it 40%, 50, 60%? Let's also be realistic in Chile. It's quite interesting or frightening to note that there is a shortage of water supply for domestic use because we want to drive our electric cars. Here we go. Let's upset Elon Musk. Let's go for this. 65% of the clean water they produce is used to mine lithium. Now, how can that be a sensible solution? And they're losing a lot of water and they need help. And therefore, you have to design something that can help every community and every water company in the world because it's a real threat. And we should be focusing on water. Because people say to me, why haven't you gone into the oil and gas with your AI? You know, oil and gas is easy. Why did you go into water? Nobody moves in water. It goes at snail's pace. Because water is where it's at, where it matters. And it's only if we work together that we're going to solve this problem. So when you're sitting in the UK, and I love Thames, bless them, I didn't want to be in their press room. The day they announced a hosepipe ban, Kensington and Chelsea flooded because the mains burst. They weren't using Fido there, but it's so when you see these, please don't use your hose pipe. You may experience little or no pressure. That means they've run out of water. So and they're trying really hard, but they're only given 5-year windows to do it with. So what we need to do is make it as easy for them, bring in the experts to help change by making it just an extension of what they do, by involving the community. So if you knew, I'm really sorry, I've got to come and fix your road, but I'm only going to dig up because there's a really large leak. You've got a few small ones, I'm not going to worry about that. But you and I together, we're going to make sure we don't run out of water. And it's the ability to take that technology we've developed in the UK, make it global. As long as you've got water in a pipe, that's all we need. But we need to focus on day zero, and we need to get governments, academia, trade, company, and the communities to, it's like going to the doctor, say, I've got an embarrassing problem. Well, until you embrace the fact you've got an embarrassing problem, how are you going to fix it? So we need to have that conversation, be open and honest about it. And then there's enough great minds in the world to fix this through a real collaborative, and I mean collaborative, not just a tick in a box, but properly collaborative, non-proprietary way. And we can solve this problem, and we can stave off day zero.
Thanks, Victoria. Any other questions? Yes, please.
Yeah. Hi, Vikas Agarwal from ACCA. So mine's like 3 little bits. I think, do we have enough political leadership to allow municipalities to raise their own finance for big infrastructure projects, like water in particular? Do municipalities have the right skills to effectively manage those projects in terms of public financial management? And then do they have sufficient natural capital management strategies in order to value water, water loss, land use, agricultural development? And I think that's probably a little bit from everyone.
So the part basically for the training or the skills actually that are available to run actually these, there are some training sessions actually that's being taken nowadays to improve the skills and so on for the people to be able to run all these smart cities and everything now. And that's why what we're working on right now actually from the school, and to make sure that all the skills is being there from day one. So that's why you are having the project-based learning and the flipped classroom and so on, to be able to improve the skills, either software or soft skills or hard skills, to make sure that we have enough skills actually to be able to run all these programs and make sure that they are fitting actually in the market for everything.
Hazem, yes.
So what Dr. Shafi mentioned is the long-term solution, and it's quite essential. But my answer is most of the time not. They don't have the skills, they don't have the capability to do so. And I want to draw on a program that I've been personally involved with, which is the 100 Smart Cities program in India. The government there, when Prime Minister Modi came into power, basically realized that they need to take advantage of what's happening in India in the ICT sector and to create that national program in order to incentivize cities and support them with a national program at the central level, with funding, with know-how, with almost smart city blueprints. And what they're doing right now is, once they've incentivized those first 100 smart cities, and the definition of what is essential for each city in India is going to be different from Helsinki or any other cities. So a lot of projects around water sanitation and all of that did qualify. And the beauty of this program is, through the central government support, they were able to take some of the lessons learned and some of these use cases and solutions and to start to scale up to other cities that were not initially part of the program, to bridge that gap. Now, it's not only in India. We took that same concept, and I was involved in a project in Portugal last year to create a national smart cities program for Portugal that became basically an example for the European Commission. And honestly, my dream is to do something like this in Egypt one day. So let's hope it happens.
Just a very funny anecdote on that about it's not applicable. It has to, you can have a blueprint, but you need to adapt. So I chair the digital twin between the UK and Indian government. And we're saying, yes, plastic pipes is the answer to everything because they don't leak. Well, they do. They leak at the fitting. And they said, yeah, no, I don't believe in that. I said, no, I don't believe in that too. He said, because do you know elephants can sniff water? I said, yeah, because they use sniffer dogs in the UK. They still use sniffer dogs, and people with listening sticks. I said, oh, that's interesting. He said, yeah, so we can't use plastic. He said, because they sniff the water and because they're so strong, they break through the plastic pipe. Now, that's a funny anecdote, but it's actually about local knowledge and community engagement to make sure that these blueprints that are great are then adapted to make sure it happens. But we need to bring in skill, absolutely, to be able to do it.
Victoria, I want to thank you for being such an amazing advocate for water, and the message regarding what we should do in universities, developing this passion in our students. So my question to you, Hazem, so you're obviously an expert in smart cities, as far as I understood from the brief comments you made. What advice would you give us to a university which is young, and my colleague Dr. Mohammed, he's in our engineering. What should we do in order to contribute? Because you said, I noted that you said it's long term, but 4 years is not really terribly long term, because we get our graduates either 3 or 4 years given our model of education.
So I think you have a very important role to play. And I go back to the framework that I was talking about the components. Academia is a very important program contributor. I went to school at UC Berkeley, and there basically the university has been so active in teaming up, with Silicon Valley, with the technology companies, and really engaging the students in, you talk about allowing failure and entrepreneurship. That is what basically these proofs of concepts are going to be all about. It is about the students working with private sector companies and technology. We have some of them represented here, and making sure that we get that, triple pentahelix together: academia, the private sector, the government, and the community, and enthusiastic citizens and NGOs. Those 5 components are essential to any successful, not only smart city, but any innovation ecosystem. And you guys need to very honestly get out of your campuses, be more sort of like proactive, reach out to the technology companies, and offer them your students. I've learned a lot from my 12-year-old son designing a sustainable city for his, school project than I've done with many other peer experts, because they think out of the box.
Yes, please.
Brief question to Mohammed. Would fiscal incentives help make the projects more bankable? And if so, are you seeing any low-hanging fruit there in your engagements with governments?
Yeah. So actually, it would help the project sponsor on modeling the project as a whole, and in turn, it will help in making it more bankable, if that's what you mean. So yes, it is very helpful for us and for the project sponsor from the other side in modeling the project. Yes.
I think we don't have time for more questions. And thank you all for listening. Yeah. So, okay. So our speakers, anyway, they are around if you have more questions or if you would like to discuss anything. And thank you all for participating in this. Thanks.
Okay. So, as part of the organizer, I just want to thank you, Mohammed, for and I'm sure you're all going to agree with me, having sat through a number of these things. This is probably one of the most interesting debates and genuine debates, and you're actually raising the level of discussion that we're having. Thank you for that. If I may, a very small plug in this. I think we're not going to ask you, Victoria, if you're passionate about water, because I think we may know the answer. But I think there's a demonstration of what Fido does in this one of the stands next door. Is there something on the Vodafone stand that demonstrates? Or something? Oh, there's not. Okay, yeah, because I didn't want to ask, but I mean, actually, you're in real life now, helping people save leaks. So implementation, it is actually happening. It's not just conceptual. So we've had academic, we've had conceptual, we've got consultancy, and we also have real life implementation. So Mohammed, thank you again.
Thanks,
for
Ian.
great
Thank you.
moderation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry?